So they're paying more money and I'm making less money. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation.
Growing an excavation business is tough. That's why we bring in existing business owners to have conversations so that you guys can, one, know you're not alone in this journey, and two, pick up some pieces of advice from other guys that are doing it in the dirt just like you. Welcome to another episode of the Skid Steer Nation podcast. As always, I am your host, Ryan Deemer. And before we introduce Ethan, I want to take just a half a second to ask you all to please subscribe and share the podcast. That's how we know you're like the content we're putting out. We work pretty hard to do this to make sure you guys get that information and hear these stories. So all I'm asking is for a few little clicks from your thumbs. And if you're in the market for any skid steer attachments, do not forget Skid Steer Nation is actually an e-commerce skid steer attachment store. Head over to skidsteernation.com. From buckets to graders to power rakes to stump grinders, telescoping booms, 4-in-1 buckets, and the list goes on and on. If you're in the market for some high quality American-made attachments, head over to skidsteernation.com. All right, this week we've got a young man who was just reckless enough to start a business while he was in high school. He just turned a whopping 22 years old, and he's already got 5 years experience in the industry. So, Ethan, thank you for taking time out of your day and joining the Skid Steer Nation podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me on here.
Oh, we're excited to get talking to you, man. Yeah, so you're over in the Ohio tri-state valley area. You were telling me that you're pretty close to West Virginia and Pittsburgh, so that's kind of a regional point.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm only about 45 minutes to an hour from Pittsburgh, and then Wheeling, West Virginia is only like 20 minutes from me.
Got it. Awesome. So you're a high school student. You start an excavation company. I can only assume that you used somebody's equipment or rented something and liked it and moved in. So tell us a little bit of how you got started.
I actually started from nothing. So I started cutting grass. I know that's how a lot of people get into the entry level stuff. My math teacher, my freshman year, had a lawnmower that he said he was going to throw away. So I actually took that home and fixed it. It was just the governor. So something super simple. And I started cutting grass out of a 2-door Ranger that I paid $600 for.
I love it. And how did cutting grass transition into excavation?
So I cut grass the entire time I was in high school. I only had 10 to 15 lawns. It didn't get too crazy. I could do everything in one day. And things started to grow. I started to do some landscaping jobs on the side. And I graduated high school. I had a 4.0 the entire time I was in high school. So I got a full ride to the University of Akron for construction engineering. And I wasn't too fond on going to college. I really just wanted to focus on my business, but everyone kind of pushed me to get the degree since I got a scholarship. So I left for college, and Akron is about 2.5 hours from here. So when I left for college, I would have to come home every single weekend and take care of all my lawns and all my clients. And it got super, super daunting having to, my first year in school, I'm still trying to figure out the whole college thing. And then coming home, I would leave Thursday night, come home Friday, Saturday, Sunday, work, and then go back to school. Because I didn't want to drop my lawns, because then in the springtime, obviously, if they found someone else to cut them while I was in school, then they're not going to rehire me in the springtime.
Right.
So when I got back to school that winter, I was like, okay, I got to do something different. I need to brainstorm. And that's when I sold all my lawn equipment and Facebook Marketplace. And originally I was looking for a skid steer. I was trying to find like a cheap wheeled skid steer that I could fix up. And I ended up coming across an excavator. I bought a 2008 Caterpillar 303. And it had 9,000 hours on it. All the pins were sloppy and loose. The guy was getting a divorce, so he needed to sell it literally that day. And I was able to buy it for only 10 grand. So that was like the best deal I could find on anything.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good deal. But why? What was the mindset behind buying an excavator? Like, you didn't have any excavation work lined up yet, and you're 2.5 hours from home. So like, where were you at mentally when you made this purchase?
So I bought the excavator because I knew that it's something that I could do in the summertime. And then when school would come around, I would be able to quit and focus on school. So that was my theory behind it. It was something that I wasn't like married to every single week during the entire season.
Okay. So you get home that first summer, you've got an excavator in your hands.
Yeah. So at first, it was like the most exciting day of my life. It was like Christmas morning. My dad worked for a construction company, so he borrowed a trailer and hauled it home. And then I got it home and quickly realized that now I can't do any work because I don't have a trailer to haul it and I don't have a truck to haul it. So I ended up having to still cut grass for a little bit until I bought like a homemade trailer that it was able to fit on. And the first thing I started doing was stump removal. I had a bunch of people that wanted stumps dug out, and I wasn't very good with the excavator. So it was kind of like perfect to learn. So that was how I kind of started operating and stuff. And I started doing a bunch of stump removals and everything, made pretty decent money, was able to buy my first dump truck. And then COVID hit. So college, we all came home, and I was getting done with class. Because everything was online. I was able to get my classes done a day or two. And then I had the rest of the week, I had all this free time. And all my friends, they had jobs and were all grown up and stuff too. So I didn't really have anything to do. And that's when I really started focusing on my excavating company. And I just made a free ad on Facebook Marketplace and ended up getting, I don't know, 10 or 15 jobs from that. And that's when I was like, I really think I can do this. And I remember my first big job was Ogilvy is a really nice neighborhood over in Wheeling. And a guy was putting an addition on. So he wanted me to clear the land for the addition. It was, I don't know, like a quarter of an acre that I was going to clear. And I rented an 85 for the day because I quickly realized that my 303 was way too small. So I rented an 85 for the day, was able to clear all the trees, grub all this stuff. And I think I made like $2,500 profit in one day. And at 19 years old, that was like the craziest thing in the entire world.
Yeah. It's like what the government gives you for a whole month of college. You did it in a day.
Yeah.
A whole semester. Sorry, not even a month, a semester.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
then I really was focusing on my excavating company, and I did that all summer, and things started to go really, really well. I was able to buy a wheeled skid steer, and growing up, I always bought and flipped stuff on Facebook. So I would always like buy and sell dirt bikes on the side. And I started doing that with equipment. So I was like buying cheaper skid steers and then fixing them and flipping them and kind of working my way up the chain. And so a year goes by, and now the COVID things have kind of started to settle down, and school told me it was mandatory that I come back from my labs and stuff. I wasn't able to do anything online anymore. So now I was kind of stuck with a really big decision because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back to school. I started, my business. I was making good money, and this is kind of what I always wanted to do. So I thought about it, and I talked to some people, and I decided that now is like the best time to go all in on my business. So I don't have a whole lot of responsibilities. So I had enough money saved up. I dropped out of college. So then I lost my scholarship. So I have to pay all that money back. And that was very daunting too. But I ended up going and buying a track skid steer like the same week that I dropped out of college. I bought a 2014 Caterpillar. It was a 259. And that was like a huge game changer. So now I have my mini, I have my skid steer, dump truck trailer, and I was able to actually start doing excavating work. There was a lot of jobs I had to say no to just because I didn't have the right equipment. I kind of had to pick and choose. But that was what dropping out of school really, it was kind of like a burnt the bridge. You know what I mean? I didn't have a choice but to make it now.
Yeah, you're committed.
Absolutely.
So that's so impressive, man. Like, I mean, let's just take a half a second and backtrack here. Like, here's a kid in high school with determination to start a lawn care business and not have any free time on his evenings and weekends. College comes, and like, that's impressive to me. You're driving hours back and forth to maintain so you don't lose those clients. Mm-hmm. And then while you're doing all of this and in school, you're flipping equipment for a profit. Like, you've got like multiple buckets that your mind's bouncing back and from, and you were able to maintain all that and, do it all well enough that it didn't collapse as a whole. That's so impressive.
Absolutely.
That's so impressive. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah. Thank you. So my second year, that would be, I guess, considered my second year of excavating, is when things started to get really serious. I had a couple of my friends that came with me. So that was my first year having other employees and stuff. And my dad started kind of helping me on the side. He was a superintendent, so he worked a lot of hours, but he was able to come and kind of help us on the side and things like that. And no one really knew excavating. I didn't like grow up with anyone in my family that did excavating or operating and stuff. I mean, I did a lot of just self-teaching and the internet. There's so much information out there that you can learn, that I would just study like different ways to bid things and different estimating. Cause I think that side of the things is definitely the hardest part. Doing the work is a lot easier to learn, I think, than the numbers and knowing overhead and all those things.
I totally agree with you on that. And it is true. Like, the internet is an amazing source of knowledge if you just know what to search.
Absolutely.
Like unfortunately, it's not all in a nice book diagram where you start with chapter 1 and go to chapter 20. Like you got to go find chapter 1 and then make sure you're not reading chapter 5 before chapter 8. And so I think that's where a lot of guys get like frustrated with the internet aspect. But if you wanted to, like you could literally you can get a college education online for free.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was another thing too. When I bought that skid steer and I kind of wanted to go all in on things, I decided that I hired a bookkeeper, and then I also got a CPA too, just so that they could help me do the right thing. I didn't want to make a mistake with the tax side of things and everything like that while I was getting started, which I think it's well worth the money. I think, you make one mistake and it costs you more than it costs you to pay them. Everyone told me, build your team from the beginning.
100. That's such great advice, like building your team. And like, that team doesn't include just employees. It's the contractors that you hire.
Absolutely.
Because they are an extension of your business one way or another. And I 100% fully agree with that. I mean, growing up in my 20s and running businesses, like we tried to spend the least amount of possible on like an accountant. Like, well, we can do the monthly bookkeeping and we'll just have them do it once a year. Yeah. And it really is between the time you spend and the mistakes you make. It's just worth hiring somebody from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Like our chart of accounts weren't right. Like the tax rate that we were setting aside wasn't right. Like nothing was right when it came time for tax time. So I agree. And like, if that's a strong suit and you've got a background in that, do it. But if it's not, hire somebody that is strong in that. Absolutely.
And like, I have so many eggs in so many different baskets that I wanted to be able to try to focus on my business side of things. So.
No, that's fantastic advice. So when you would meet with that accountant, like, did you go in like a list of questions so that you could get better at running your business on day to day?
It was funny. I went in and I kind of did my homework and stuff and made like a checklist of all the things that I wanted to do. And I went in and sat down and told them that I wanted to be an S corp and exactly how I wanted to set my business up. Like I wanted to skip the sole proprietorship and skip the LLC and go straight to that. And it was funny that he was like mind blown that all the different things that I was talking about. He said that I was actually right and asked me if I had any background in it. And I said no, that it was all just like through doing research on the internet.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I always make sure I just find like I talk to so many guys and like getting an accountant or finding one that works for them is almost like a fearful event. Like they don't know enough about that side, so they don't even know what questions to ask that person.
No, absolutely. And I was very, very nervous because like I didn't want to spend, astronomical amount of money on someone if I didn't have to, or didn't know if they would be doing the wrong thing. Because, I didn't know anything. So if they would have went in and told me everything I said was wrong and I need to do this, this, and this, I would have listened to them. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to get a general idea of the structure that I wanted and then let them handle it from there.
No, I mean, that's a great point is like, if you're at that point, if you're owning a business and like upgrading an accountant or hiring a bookkeeper seems like a daunting task. Just go Google top 20 questions to ask a prospective bookkeeper, top 10 things an accountant should do for an excavation company, and like get some information. So when you do go meet with those people, treat it like an interview.
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
Interviewing them to make sure they're a good fit for your team.
Absolutely.
I think that's a step that a lot of business owners skip. They're just like, oh, you're an accountant and you can do this. Awesome. You're hired. And they don't even know what they can and can't do.
And I feel like I do that on my estimation side of things with my clients and my customers. Like I kind of give them some interview questions and let them know if I'm even the right fit for them. I'm not necessarily trying to sell me to everyone. I want to make sure that the customer is getting the most value, even if it's not from me.
So what do you mean by those interview questions? Is this to protect yourself, or is it to actually make sure the customer is getting what they need?
Yeah, the customer's actually getting what they need. So kind of where my business at now is, now that I have enough employees and a larger overhead and stuff, I find there's a lot of smaller jobs and things that I would be happy to go and do. But for what I have to charge to be able to make money, I can recommend, a smaller company or someone that's just getting started to a client to help save them money. And I would rather do that than try to upsell myself to them on a smaller job that I really don't even want to do in the first place. So they're paying more money and I'm making less money. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation.
Got it. So do a lot of your decisions that you make when it comes to your bidding, estimating, and customers always have the customer at the forefront ahead of yourself?
Absolutely.
Do you find that your business is growing more successfully because the customer is the focal point?
Yes, absolutely. And I also find that when it is a fit for us, that the customer kind of can get some trust in knowing that I want what's best for them. So they kind of see a value in that.
No, I completely agree with you. That's a very wise way to look at your business. So,
And even clients that I haven't got, like say I go to look at a job and then I end up recommending someone else just because I think it's a better fit. And the client can recognize that, I'm not just there trying to sell myself. And then a similar job or something that is more fitted for me, they've recommended their friends and stuff to come to me to do that because that I would send them in the right direction.
No, yeah. So you're building a network of other excavation company owners that you guys are able to pool your resources basically and make sure that everyone gets the right jobs that fits their skill set and equipment.
Absolutely. And I was super nervous at first because with the competition, like I didn't really know how to go about it or how to handle it. Like I thought that all competition just like hated each other. You know what I mean? That it was this big game, and it's been awesome. Like, I mean, I would say that we're all friends. I mean, because it's a pretty small town. Everyone kind of knows each other, the area that we work in, and we all know each other and trade jobs back and forth. And because a lot of us are specialized and have a niche in what we like to do, and it's usually all different. So we trade work back and forth and stuff. And it's a really good community.
No, that's fantastic. I learned that back when I was in my 20s. I used to own some bars and restaurants when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
In the area that we had our first bar was like on the main street downtown. So there was like 12 bars and restaurants all in a matter of a 3-block area. And without even trying to, you just automatically become acquaintances and sometimes friends with the people that are on the same level as you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you're not hanging out with the laborer for the competitors. You're hanging out with the business owners. Like it was the same for us. Like you hang out with the owners. And what you find is like when that mind power gets together and everyone's not like trying to learn something to steal to use it for themselves, but we all try to do better. Like we set pricing bottoms. Like, hey, don't run specials below this price because nobody wins then.
Absolutely.
Let's do group downtown events so that we can have a hell of a Saturday for all of us instead of all of us trying to compete for the same people on a Saturday. Let's double the crowd. So like it's that same type of mentality, like the hive mentality. When you get multiple people together, the results can be 10x what they would be on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And like a big example is I do a lot of concrete flat work now. So we've kind of moved into that. And there isn't a lot of people that do it around here, especially the excavating companies. And I don't do septics. So I'm not licensed to do septics, but another one of my friends that's an excavating company is. So we trade back and forth concrete and septic work like crazy.
Yeah. And that's the best way to do it, is find people that are doing like a niche that complements your services or a little bit off of yours.
And I'm pretty sure we actually met through a Facebook group because it seems like we're all in the skid steer. There's a skid steer group. There's a couple of them on Facebook that like almost all of them. And they saw me posting there one time and we ended up talking on Facebook Messenger. And then that's how we started just like trading work back and forth. And that's how we met. So,
yeah. Networking's a lost art, man. Like we get so, I feel like today's society, we get so focused on what we need. And then we have so many distractions with social media or television.
But I tell everyone always asks me advice on like starting a business, and whether you're starting an ice cream stand or excavating or whatever, I always say networking is the most important. Networking.
Yeah. And I feel like COVID really screwed that up. Like
Absolutely.
We got so used to just being alone or sending text messages that we forgot to meet in person. And that's when magic happens.
That's like, I'm having a hard time having anyone else help me with the excavating or the estimation side of things in my business, because I love meeting customers face to face and like selling myself. You know what I mean? I feel like I have really good customer service and they can just tell when I talk to them. It's hard to try to find someone that also has that same amount of passion, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, just from the little bit of time we've been talking, like what I take away from you is that you're always calm and collected when you're talking to a customer would be my first assumption.
Absolutely.
There's not highs and lows in your delivery, your excitement level. You're calm and, like you're steadfast, which actually builds trust because it comes off as informational. And then as soon as you start talking about, well, I want to make sure that we're a good fit for you and you get the best value for the service you need. Those are all things that if you can stay consistent with that delivery, you'll always be successful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, because you hear so many areas in the United States, and I'm sure you have a lot of this in your area too, but like there's so many business owners out there that don't answer phone calls. They don't show up for estimates on time. They're always flying from the seat of their pants.
8 out of 10 customers I meet with, just showing up, they're like astonished. they're like, we've called so many people, and, they called 10 people and 6 of them called them back and 3 of them scheduled an estimate. And I was the only one that showed up. And I like to, unless I'm super, super busy, by the time someone contacts me, I like to at least make it out there in 48 hours. Within 48 hours, try to get there and just meet them. So
I preach, like, if you answer the phone and call people back and communicate throughout the process, there's no way you can't be successful in this industry because so many people aren't doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to write my estimates up as quick as I can and get them back to them too, just to show them that, I'm interested in their work. And I also preach communication. Like, I make sure that they know that they can call me anytime, text me anytime. And there's a lot of times we'll be doing a project and a customer's kind of like something small that maybe they want changed or fixed, but they told me about it immediately and we were able to fix it. And it was no big deal, to where if they would have waited until the project was over or we didn't communicate correctly, then it would have been a bigger deal and harder to fix.
Absolutely. Those are all great points. And if anyone's out there struggling with the business, I would start with, how often do you answer the phone? How quickly do you respond? How quick do you get your estimates out? And then the last thing I would add is, especially on estimates and first time meeting a customer, how professional do you look? Like, we preach the difference between job site dirty and like tattered jeans dirty.
Absolutely.
But if you look professional and you can speak well and you can actually communicate in a timely manner, if you're struggling, I think you'll instantly increase your business substantially.
Yeah. And like, it's little things too. Like, I'm not saying that I show up to every single estimate in a collared shirt and everything too, but, I like to drive one of my company vehicles and, I don't bring friends with me. And like, it's not like I'm out hanging out with my friends and then have one of them drive me over to someone's house. And I guess that's probably something you'd have to worry about with just younger generation people. But I do have like no kids my age that have landscaping companies and stuff like that. And, they're doing things like that or forgetting estimates and not showing up. And, it only takes a couple people you tell that to, and then word starts to spread, especially with social media.
Yeah. And I don't think it's that hard to like leave a little go bag in your vehicle. Like, if you're a solo operator and you've been working on a job for 12 hours and you got to go do an estimate when you're done, just have a different t-shirt. You haven't been sweating and getting dirty in all day.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be a 3-piece suit, just something so that when you get there, because first impressions, man, they're hard to get past.
Absolutely.
And like, we had guys come look at some work for our project. And I think one of the guys was wearing like a heavy metal band t-shirt.
Mm-hmm. And
I was like, I'm out. I was out right there, because if you don't care enough to look presentable, I don't even know if you're going to show up. And I judged him. Like, I'm not going to lie about it.
Which, put yourself in the customer's shoes. I would be doing the exact same thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's exactly what.
Yeah. I'm going to give you my money. Like, I have expectations of who I want to work with. People like working with like-minded people and people that are similar to them.
And I also always preach to newer people that are asking for like business advice and stuff, I try not to be the cheapest person. Like, I'm not out there just bidding, because number one, when you get stuck doing a job that A, is costing you money, or B, you're working for free, it doesn't matter, how nice of a job you are. You're not having fun. What I mean? At the end of the day. And there's once you start working with, I don't like working with clients that necessarily want the cheapest customer, because those are the clients that you're going to have trouble with, where if something comes up, they're going to want you to, cut corners, or you possibly could not get paid. You're going to have more issues with them than with the customer, that they're going to go with the person that they think is going to do the best job. Now, not necessarily the most expensive either, but, somewhere in that medium range, that they're looking for more things than just price.
Yeah. So just to comment on those two topics, one, the price don't being the cheapest. Mm-hmm. I always say, if you're competing on price, you can only go to zero. Like, there's a stop point. It's done at zero, where if you compete on value, the price becomes irrelevant. You can actually charge more.
Yeah. I had a really large contractor around here tell me that, if you're winning 80, 90, 100% of your bids, that you're not charging enough money.
You're not charging enough money. Yeah. And then for the customers that want the lowest price, and you said they can provide the most headaches and all that, like, there's a rule out there called Pareto's rule. It's the 80-20 rule. Mm-hmm. So 80% of your headaches come from the bottom 20% of your customers.
Yep, absolutely.
And the vice versa, 80% of your profits come from the top 20%.
Yeah, and when I first started, of course, I would do anything I could get my hands on, and I did have to deal with some kind of customers. But now that I'm kind of changing my business model and stuff, and I can do things differently, man, when you start to work with those customers, something comes up and you're like, hey, I apologize. We didn't know about this. We need to make a change order. It's going to be X amount of dollars. And they're like, do whatever you need to do. We just want to make sure it's right. It's like, wow, that was so easy.
So refreshing, right?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about doing the interview with the customers, to make sure you're a good fit for them and that you have a full understanding of the project that they want completed. Are you doing that in person? Or are you doing that on the phone before you drive out to meet them?
So normally I do it all in person, but I've got to the point where I've wasted so much time on doing estimates, so many dead end calls, that I am working on trying to do some kind of interview process, either like over when they initially contact me over Facebook Messenger, or on the phone.
Yeah. I think the best thing you can do, and this is for anyone that owns any type of business that is a service-based business. I mean, excavation is what we deal in, right? But any service business works. Just remember that every marketing you do should have a direct reason why you're doing it. So like getting a Facebook Messenger message started should be to initiate the conversation so that you can get a phone number and then talk to them on the phone. Like, I don't think you need to do the whole process in Messenger, because so much gets lost in translation via text.
Absolutely.
Right? Like if I'm sending somebody to a website to download a guide, like my goal is to get their name, phone number, email address, not to make the sale.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so everything has a step and a process. And once you understand, like when you create an ad, to create a Messenger ad, your goal for that is to get phone call conversations began, not 7 jobs. And when you can change that mindset, you can actually look at everything you're doing and say, okay, what's the goal of this? And then for every phone call, like your goal will be to interview them and then determine if they're a good fit to go out and do that on site. Because your time is the one thing that you have the same as every billionaire and homeless person. It doesn't change. It doesn't matter how wealthy or how successful you are. You get the same as the guy living on the street in San Francisco.
Absolutely. And I'm still working on those questions. So I also don't want to necessarily like offend customers, because like a lot of times I felt like asking what their budget was kind of rude. But at the same time, now I'm getting to the point where people think that I'm going to come out for $200 with, a skid steer for a day and do something for them, to where a lot of people just don't understand what that kind of stuff costs. So by asking a budget, I can at least get some kind of roundabout idea to throw out those dead end customers.
Well, and really what I would recommend for you is you've done how many in-person consultations over the last 5 years? Hundreds, exactly. Right? Maybe even thousands. So you've already asked every question you need to ask on the phone. So just role play in your head and relive the conversations with the most successful customers. And remember, like, oh yeah, we started with these conversations, like whether it's small talk or a little idea on the project or what the end result of what they're trying to accomplish, and just work through all those conversations you've had in the past. And you can build a pretty good baseline of questions and then modify it as you go. It's never a finished list. It's evergreen. It's always changing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I find people like to get to the point. I mean, your customers don't want their time wasted either. I mean, they've got Facebook to scroll.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they like it when you kind of are polite, but yet to the point, and again, like you'd hate to drive all the way out there to find out it's for a septic system. And you're like, shit, I don't even do these.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and Facebook is, I mean, it is such a valuable tool. I would say it is definitely the biggest catalyst for my business.
Is it still today?
Yeah, still today. And I've used plenty of other things. I mean, word of mouth, it's probably 50-50 now that I've kind of established myself between word of mouth and Facebook. But getting started, man, it was absolutely Facebook.
So you talked about posting of an ad in Marketplace earlier in the conversation. So how did you do that? Because Marketplace does not allow you to promote services.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff flagged and a lot of stuff removed learning that. And then I did start doing paid ads, and I only do paid ads now. You can still get away with the Marketplace thing if you kind of, word it kind of dumbed down and stuff like that. But I find that it's worth the money for the paid ads.
So what's working for you in the paid ads? Like, are you just promoting your company, specific services, pain point?
I just have kind of a list of all the services that we provide. And then I have like a link to my website, my phone number, my email and stuff there. And then I just kind of post projects that we're working on usually at the time. So every month or so, I'll update my ad with what I think are like some of the coolest projects that we've done recently. And I actually did take a Facebook marketing class that kind of broke down all the different things you can do on there, and you can target areas and make geofencing. And there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with Facebook.
Did you do that with Zach?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I've been working with Zach for a while.
Got it. Yeah, I'm actually putting something together like that for the people we work with in the Groundbreaking Growth course too, because there are a lot of guys like you that want to know how to do ads on Facebook better.
Mhm.
Like when we first started doing it, I was like, just boost the post and make sure this is right and that's right, because it's intricate once you get in the back end of Facebook to build and
Yeah,
target.
after meeting with Zach, I mean, there was a lot of things where I could start to kind of shoot for that like higher end customers and like change my business model a little bit using those kind of things. And the geofence was a big deal too. So I personally don't work in Pennsylvania, but since I'm so close to Pennsylvania, if I just set it my radius to 15 miles, there was a lot of work that I had to turn down just because it was in Pennsylvania. So I can set a geofence up around there. Or if I build a super nice retaining wall in a really nice neighborhood close by, I can literally set a geofence to just that neighborhood and blast my retaining wall ads in just that neighborhood to try to work with those customers.
Yeah. And for anyone that's listening, like, geofence is like basically a perimeter that you say, hey, don't show my ad to anyone outside of this perimeter.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's a lot more specific than the round circle that Facebook
Mhm.
gives you as a radius. Now, I find the geofence is nice, but sometimes I find it cumbersome to set up or whatever. So I like to do advertising based on zip code.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I can get granular. You can still get really granular, right? Like when Peoria, Illinois, there's like 11 zip codes. So if I don't want to promote to the south end of town where the income's lower than the north end, I just don't put those zip codes in my ad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that just seems to be like, if you know the 7 zip codes, it's just so easy to type them in. You don't have to you don't have to massage the software to get what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it definitely takes some time to set it up. But now that I have it set up, I really don't do a whole lot with it now that I kind of have my working areas that I like to do.
So is it an actual, because is that an actual geofence, or did you create your own using the include and exclude?
No, it's whatever is in that like Facebook program, just dropping like those pins around there.
Yeah. So that's, yeah. So I don't know how deep I want to go on Facebook advertising because we might have guys out there, but yeah, you can basically put a pin and that's where the circle begins for how big. And then you can change the size of that. Say, show my ad in a 5, 10, 50-mile radius.
Yep.
Then you can also hit the exclude button, which takes it from a blue circle to a red circle. And then you can overlap those and cut out versions and areas. Mm-hmm. So, and that's how that was the workaround we found for for the geofencing.
Yeah.
But if you did a job in a subdivision to the west of town, like you've got to spend 15 minutes making sure that those include and excludes are right. Mm-hmm. And you got to do it again over there, where if I just know the zip code, I just save 15, 20 minutes. So, and you're close enough. And if people in that zip code, they're probably going to be similar to the customer you just worked with.
Absolutely.
Like I don't need to be in that exact neighborhood. I just want to make sure I have that neighborhood covered with the zip code that I'm covering. Mm-hmm. So to me, I like the zip. That's the reason I like zip code marketing versus the include exclude. Unless you're doing a big broad range where you're like, hey, I want to cover 50 miles, but I don't want Pennsylvania. So then I can do the big 50 miles and then figure out my tabs to block off Pennsylvania so it doesn't show the ad over there.
Yep. Yeah.
And then another thing, we're talking about advertising. I think a lot of guys miss the boat because there's a lot. Like, think about how many wives or women call your company. It's probably more than 2%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Like, but none of our ads are women focused. Like, we're not writing the ad to a woman. Mm-hmm. And I really think that that's a niche that a lot of business owners could increase business by being more focused on the women.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my friend in North Carolina, like any woman that calls him and he goes out and meets with, because he's a retired police officer, he gets the job because they're not worried about him being a sleazy young, like drugs, dropout, whatever else. Like, oh, this guy's a cop. Like he's fine on my property. Like, I feel safe and comfortable with him.
Yeah. Speaking of selling jobs and that kind of thing, being young, I was super nervous at first too, thinking that, I go out, how am I going to tell these people, obviously I only have a couple years experience because of my age, they're going to ask all these questions. And I definitely had people that, would just think that I'm just working for my dad's business or, a family business or something like that. But no, it was absolutely the exact opposite. Like when I would go out and a lot of the times people would ask me, I would tell them my story. I would tell them how I got started, a quick, summed up version of it. And people absolutely loved it. I feel like I sold a lot of work by just being young and motivated. People really like to see that.
And I agree, because if you came to my residence, I probably would ask you some questions like, how long have you been doing this? Like, how old are you? Because for those of you listening, like, he's, not to sound weird, but you're good looking, but you can definitely tell you're a young kid. Like you're not a 22-year-old that looks like he's 28. Like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would ask questions like that. And if you told me that backstory about cutting grass and going to school and coming home every weekend and having like that drive and commitment, I've been like, sold. I like you. I like your drive, commitment, and he'll figure it out. Like that's the type of person he is. So I totally agree. Like that backstory that you have is a great story to sell jobs if it's ever needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So neat. So neat. So how many employees do you have for the company now?
So I have 3 full-time and then another 4 or 5 part-time that I work part-time.
How do you guys work together? Do you have great days all the time, or is it a burden some
So
days?
the 3 that work full-time, it would be me, one of my best friends from high school, and then my 3rd year, I got busy enough that my dad actually quit his full-time construction job and came to work with us full-time. And it's been awesome having him with me as well. There's a lot of things that obviously he knows way more than I do and does have a lot of experience in the construction industry. So that's also why we started doing a lot of concrete flat work and stuff. He has a lot of experience in that. So that kind of became our niche. And yeah, we really do work really well together. Obviously the father-son thing, we definitely have our days, but for the most part, yeah, it's been great.
That's fantastic. So when you talk about like growing your business, and now you got 3, 4 guys and then a bunch of part-timers, have you actually put any thought in the front about the type of business you want to have and the culture and the way you want to grow the
Yeah,
business?
absolutely. So for now, I really want to try to keep my labor down and efficiency and the type of projects I'm doing to kind of grow that way. So like an example of something is I invested in an Encon. I know everyone's seen the tilt rotator. I've had mine on my 35 for probably like 8, 9 months now. And the amount of labor that's cut down on has been absolutely huge. It was like hiring 2 more guys. And it's all about efficiency. I would like to get into like having a rover and a total station GPS and stuff so I can kind of keep our small group. Because like I said, we just work so fantastic together. And I feel like we get as much work done as 5 guys just because we work so good together.
You do. And like, I mean, in a past episode, we talked with Tom Gardaki, he's known as the Dirt Ninja on YouTube. But he did the exact same thing. He invested into technology to become more efficient. And what he found, and it wasn't on purpose, it was completely accident, that new technology he added to the company made the guys excited because it was not the same thing every day. They learned a new skill. They became better operators and all that. And then on the other thing he found was that they don't want to ever leave because that means they have to go back to a company and do it the old way.
Absolutely. So a good story on this is, so my best friend that works for me now, we were friends in high school. He didn't help me cut grass. I cut my lawns on my own. But when we did our landscaping projects and stuff, I started to need some help. So he was working at our local dollar store for minimum wage. And I remember I got a landscaping job. It was my first landscaping job for one of our teachers. We were removing some lava rock and was going to remulch all our flower beds and stuff. And I went and told him that I need help with it. And he was like, oh, I got to work all these days this week, blah, 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 blah. I told him, I was like, if you quit your job right now, you can make your entire month's pay today. we can go do this literally today because he's only working 10, 15 hours a week for minimum wage. So right then and there, he ended up leaving the dollar store, came with me, and we had my little 2-door Ranger and shovels and haul lava rock in the back of a short bed 2-wheel drive Ranger. And after that, he helped me with all my landscaping jobs up until I went to college. And then he ended up staying home and he got a job for a landscaping company because he really liked doing that kind of stuff. And I know they were building retaining walls and cutting grass and stuff too. So I came back home. And then once I really started my business in COVID, me and him still would hang out and talk. And he was talking about them building a lot of retaining walls, but didn't have any equipment. So they were hand digging everything and like backfilling everything with wheelbarrows. And he said it was miserable. Well, I was getting retaining wall jobs and estimates, but for some reason I was just like nervous about it. I've never done one before and I didn't really have a lot of experience with it, but I was noticing that I was starting to turn down more and more and more of them. So I went to him and kind of asked him what he was getting paid. And I ended up doubling his pay for him to quit with them and come work with me and start doing the retaining walls. So we kind of ended up doing the same thing again. And he's worked for me ever since. And once we bought the Encon and he got to use, the excavator and skid steer to build these walls. I mean, we've built walls 5 times the size of anything they could do by hand. And he said that he would never go back.
No, they won't go. Yeah, they won't go back. So you're building the loyalty by investing. Like you see it as an investment in the company to become more efficient and keep the cost down. But you also have to look at it as investing in your team. You're providing them with new skills that they didn't have yesterday.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to dig retaining walls by hand all day for the amount of money they were getting paid. And I also I like to explain the logistics side to him. Like I told him, for the amount of days it would take them to dig it by hand, it would have been cheaper for him to go rent a mini excavator for the day and let him not be miserable and to dig it out and be able to do double the amount of walls in a week anyway.
And speaking of cost effective, you say one of the areas that you're really good at is knowing your numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for the guys out there that struggle with that, what's some advice or what's some things you've learned along the way that have made you better at that?
You just really need to break down your true costs, because it may seem like you're making a lot of money at first, but then once you start to get to the back end of it, you get to the end of the year and you're like, wow, I may have done $300,000 worth of work, but I had $290,000 in expenses. So you really got to know your true costs up front. And that goes back to not being the cheapest guy too. Usually those people that are underbidding you don't know their numbers and are the people that technically aren't really making any money.
So when you say you need to know your true costs, can you give me a few examples of things that you might have overlooked at the beginning or that you think are easy to overlook today?
Your overhead definitely is the biggest thing that I think a lot of people overlook. So just example, like a piece of equipment, if you go out and buy the piece of equipment and then you stop charging for it, you know what I mean? You don't add that into your bid because, you already own it. So technically, today it's not costing me anything. I don't have to go rent it or whatever else, but you're not factoring in, maintenance costs. And then in 5 years, when that piece of equipment does wear out and then you have to go buy another one, now you don't have that money to replace it. No, and things like my accountant and taxes, insurance, a lot of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've talked about this on a few different episodes, and I think it's worth talking about. I mean, literally, it'd be worth talking in every episode. But if you're struggling with knowing your numbers and you don't know where to even begin, Google Case total cost of ownership. Case has a calculator that you can put in the machine and what you bought it for, the interest rate, estimated hours you work it every year. It even allows you to add in your labor rate. So if you're going to put an employee in it, and I always tell solo operators, put yourself in as the employee so you're bidding jobs properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've used that specific tool myself.
It's the best one I've found.
Absolutely.
But it's an amazing starting point. And from there, you start getting those numbers. And what I found when I was doing it with people was that it spurred questions for me to learn other areas of my numbers.
Mm-hmm. So instead of I'm constantly working on my numbers. Always. Yeah. I'm always.
But I feel like a lot of guys sit down and they open up a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, and it's just a big white screen, and they have no idea where to begin.
Yeah, and there's definitely templates that you could purchase, which if you are really struggling, I think it's totally worth trying to get a template to break down your numbers and figure out a true cost. And I just always try to break down things even after I'm all done with the job. I like to kind of re-estimate it and break it all back down and see my estimate versus what things actually cost, what we actually used in the end.
Yeah. How long does that take you?
It all just depends on the project, but I spend a lot of time doing things like that.
Do you?
That's something back to it's my passion. You know what I mean? I enjoy doing these kind of things. I'm always thinking about this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. My favorite game when I was growing up was Monopoly. I mean, I was 5 years old playing Monopoly. So I've always liked the number crunching of things.
But do you think that if you hired a bookkeeper that you could work with them and teach and train them how to do a comparison of estimate to final project?
Yes, but that's something I haven't figured out how to do yet. I'm definitely at the point where I need to transition into something like that. But the estimating side of things is so important. You have to have so much trust in someone to be able to do that.
And I guess I'm not talking about doing the estimate. I'm talking more about you're reviewing the estimate to the cost after the job is completed.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't there
absolutely.
a way for you to get if that's not your strong suit? There's a lot of guys out there that is not their strong suit. In fact, it's not my strong suit. But if I was them, I would find a way to be like, hey, how do we label expenses? How do we label this material and all that so that when the bookkeeper gets all this, she can say, hey, this job had a total cost of this many hours of labor, this much diesel fuel, this much whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I
think there's a way for guys to do that, and it wouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, you could definitely specifically find a CPA or a bookkeeper that would be totally willing to do things like that.
Yeah. So if it's not your strong suit, don't look at yourself in the mirror going, I'm never going to make this happen. Just find a different way.
Absolutely.
The problem from a different angle.
Yeah. And you have to use your strong suits to kind of boost your business, so like the buying and flipping things like that helped me a lot, just because I had a lot of knowledge with being able to buy equipment and fix it up and then post it on Facebook Marketplace, just like I did with dirt bikes and such.
Yeah. And speaking
So
of
if you don't necessarily have like a mechanical background and don't like working on the equipment, that might not be something that you can
might not be your thing.
Yeah.
And speaking of dirt bikes, yet again, a motocross guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I had just as much motivation to get my first skid steer for my business as I did to build my own motocross track.
Yeah. And we were talking about this before the interview started, but it's just, I shouldn't say shocked. I'm more enamored at how many guys come from a motocross background and end up in excavation.
Yeah, I can't tell you what the correlation is, but there's been plenty of guys that I've met at motocross events that have excavating companies, and we just end up starting talking about business because of that. Or vice versa. I've met a couple guys with excavating companies and kind of became friends with them. And then I saw that they're racing dirt bikes on the weekends. So
yeah. I don't know. I mean, and everybody has the same answer. Like, I don't know what the correlation is, but I mean, there's obviously something, whether it's the dirt track that you're on or the smell of the engine. I don't know what it is, or the thrill. But again, like, you're going from high speed corners to like slow twisting excavators. I'm like, I don't see the correlation in the operation.
Yeah, my biggest thing is to be able to make like my own areas to ride, like my own motocross tracks and stuff like that. So I mean, like literally yesterday there was just a group of us with a bunch of skid steers and stuff working on another dirt bike track. Like, we're always building something. It's like a big sandbox and it's completely unlimited. You know what I mean? If we got an idea, we can make it.
Yeah, that is a lot of fun. And I do say that point of it where they kind of go hand in hand in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, that's awesome, man. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the 5 years you've been in business that you could share and maybe help somebody cut down their learning curve?
My biggest lesson was to start as soon as you can. Like, I think I'm a big believer in kind of just throwing yourself into the fire and kind of learning as you go. My biggest regret was not starting sooner. I mean, from the time that I made that big Facebook ad and kind of went all in on my business, I mean, I thought about it for 6 months prior to that. I mean, as soon as I started in school, and that obviously isn't a big way, but talking to someone that might be 35, 40, 45 years old, I mean, just start today, even if it's small, something on the side, like start. Don't wait for like the perfect moment and, you got to get all these ducks in a row and everything. I think that you can kind of learn as you go and it's worth it.
Great advice. In fact, there is no such thing as a perfect moment, right? I've never met a father that said it was the perfect time to have kids.
Absolutely.
Like I was 100% ready for it. Having my first, no, you weren't. You're scared of that, but you figure it out because you have to.
Yeah, I have an uncle that lives in Las Vegas, and he just he'd done surveying his entire life. He's always loved it. And he just started his own surveying company about 5 years ago. And he's in his 60s now. And that's what he says is, he wished he would have did that when he was 25 or 20 years old, but he was just scared. He was scared the whole entire time.
Yeah. And I think fear is a major part of it. We get used to being dependent on what we have, and we don't want to lose that.
Absolutely. I know it's not for everyone, but I'm big on kind of like burning that bridge so that there's no turning back. I think the saying isn't it, burn the ships,
burn the boats.
Burn the boats. Yeah. So you don't go back. I mean, because you'll figure it out. It's like your fight or flight. Like you the more motivation you have to be successful, like the better chances you are to do it.
Yeah, we just talked about that. I did an interview with a guy. He's still working part-time. He really has a great job that he loves doing, but he's getting to a point now where he's going to have a decision to make in the next 6 to 18 months. Mm-hmm. He's like, when's the perfect time? Like yesterday.
Yeah. Like my decision, like I said, I didn't have a wife or kids or a mortgage, so I didn't have huge things, but dropping out of college was a huge deal just because I kind of felt like a failure. Got to tell everyone when everyone asks what I'm doing, I'm a college dropout and I'm starting my own business. And of course, no one thought that it would ever turn into anything at the time because, I was just a young kid and didn't really know what I was doing. But yeah, it's been worth it tenfold. I'm really glad. I'm glad I didn't wait till the end of school. Like that's what everyone else wanted me to do, was to just graduate college. I would have just now been starting my business. I can't imagine being that far behind.
Yeah. And I think there's a second side of that coin, especially for somebody like yourself. But then you would have this frustration after school that you've invested all this time and energy into a civil engineering degree and you're not using it.
No, just for a piece of paper.
Right. For a company that you would own that requires 0 piece of paper from a university.
Absolutely.
So no, I think you did the right thing. Definitely. Oh man, I appreciate you coming on today. This has been a lot
thank
of
you.
fun. Great
This has been
conversation, man. Yeah. It's always wonderful to hear you guys' journeys. It's inspiring to myself. I hope it's inspiring to our listeners.
Yeah, and I love listening to it doesn't matter how many of different stories and different backgrounds. I love listening to it because you always can kind of take something away from each story.
Yeah, there's always some nuggets buried in there somewhere if you're really paying attention. But I started to wonder, like, are we doing too many of these? Is it always the same story? But everyone's unique, and like there is no such thing as the same story.
And usually there's something I take away that I apply to my business from. I mean, I listen to like a ton of excavating podcasts, and there's usually all kinds of like small information that I can implement into my business to get a little bit better every day.
Yeah, I think it was Pat Riley, like back with the Lakers years and years ago, was just like, hey, we all need to be 1% better, like incremental improvement. So if every player becomes 1% better, that means we're 5% better. And if we're averaging 100 points a game, we're going to average 105. We only lost games by 2 points. Now we're winning every game by 3 points. And so it's like that incremental difference makes the devil's in the detail.
Growing up, my dad, every single day I would come home from school, my dad would ask me what I learned today. And, I would always be like, I didn't learn anything. He's like, no, you learned something. You got to learn something every single day. You get a little bit smarter every single day.
Yeah. So there's the lady that owns the company Spanx. It's like a multi-billion-dollar women's clothing company. When she was like interviews I've heard of her, like she says every day her father asked her and her brother, what did you fail at today? He's like, because you never do anything right the first time. And if you didn't fail at anything, it means you didn't try anything new.
Absolutely.
And she contributes to her business, like jumping in and burning the boats and going all in, because she wasn't afraid of failure, because her dad had programmed her that if you're not failing, you're not trying. And if you're not trying, you're not moving forward.
Which is huge. Like they always say, fail forward,
Yeah. Fail forward. I always say fail fast. Like if you're going to go try if you wanted to try a new, like let's say septic systems, you want to try being a septic system installer, go fail fast. Like go try to get 5. And if they work, great. If they don't, get out. Like get in, get out.
Yeah, that's my newest endeavor. I just bought a roll-off truck and some dumpsters. So I think this wintertime when I have some downtime, I'm going to start renting dumpsters, and that's kind of going to be my new endeavor.
Yeah, but you're going to know within the first 6 months if it's the right endeavor for you. And if it's not,
absolutely,
get out. Like that's the thing, like fail fast, like get out.
Yep.
Don't sink good money into a bad idea.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Ethan, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
You're heading off to vacation, so enjoy the downtime.
Yes, going to go race some dirt bikes.
Imagine that. Awesome, man. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to the episode today. If you want to learn more on how to structure and grow your business or learn Facebook ads or any of that regard, don't forget, head over to groundbreakinggrowth.com. Groundbreakinggrowth.com is a division of Skid Steer Nation. It's basically a coaching and consulting business where you can hire a part-time consultant at a very reasonable fee. It's a one-time fee. And you'll work with me directly. We will work on structuring your business, developing your plan, setting your services that you want to go after, improving your marketing, giving you better strategics for your sales, and building a culture so that you can grow and scale your business and turn it into a legacy and not a job. So head over to groundbreakinggrowth.com. Till next week, guys.